I received an email on Wednesday saying that there had been one confirmed case of the COVID-19 at Lambeth House, and that they were having no visitors at that time. There's a lot of risk involved in that whole community. We have all those elderly people living in a tight-knit community in a close area. Yeah, I'm worried.
And Gathrights' mother, Barbara, lives in a nursing home you see there in New Orleans, where so far 13 of its residents have died of coronavirus. Nursing homes and long-term care facilities, of course, are some of the most vulnerable places in America, maybe the most vulnerable places in America when it comes to COVID-19. More than 400 of them across the country are residents who have already been infected. That's a 172% increase from last week, according to the CDC. These places don't have the testing or personal protective equipment to protect their own residents, who very often can't be taken out, creating a horrific dilemma for everyone involved, including staff and family members on the outside. One of the people going through that right now is NBC News policy editor Benjy Sarlin, whose father contracted the virus in a nursing home here in New York, and whose wife, Susie Kim, co-authored a fantastic piece on the increasing cases in nursing homes for NBCnews.com. Benjy joins me now. Benjy, first, tell me about how you found out about there being coronavirus in the facility your dad was in.
Well, Chris, the thing that was so shocking, I think for all of us, we've seen this around the country, was how quick it is. You know, the first case of confirmed community transmission in the United States was at the end of February. March 12th, they shut off all the visitors from the nursing home, so we can no longer see him, which is very difficult. My dad is disabled from a stroke. It's very important to have people checking in on him just to make sure he's being, everything's taken care of. A week later, we get an email that, okay, we've now had at least one confirmed case of COVID there. Within a week of that, a few days after that, I call up to check in with the administration there, and what they tell me is basically they have an uncontrolled outbreak and not even the basics of protective gear to prevent it from spreading among staff, among residents, and that my dad was showing symptoms, and in fact had been tested, which they also don't have enough tests. And from there, we had considered the possibility that we might have to, in an extreme situation, try to get him out, but this was all within days of even us being cut off from the nursing home. It was all just so fast. So we just began this desperate rush to try to find some way to get him out, which is extremely difficult. He's a 6'4" man who can't walk, who doesn't have mobility on his left side, requires very specialized care, has various health complications. And while we were struggling to find some way to pull this off, he started developing breathing problems, was taken to the hospital, and was tested again, where the previous test was negative. I'm pretty sure it was a false negative, was confirmed positive. So he's in a hospital now receiving treatment. But it was all just a mad rush. This whole period from them closing the doors to visitors was March 12th.
How is he doing right now?
Well, Chris, he's doing okay. I talked to him just a few hours ago. He's in good spirits. He just wanted to stress just how compassionate and kind the staff at his long-term care home, Mary Manning Walsh, have been to him. And he says they've always been meticulous about trying to be clean and about trying to, to keep people from getting infections. It's always a concern in nursing homes. But they're having a situation now where, there's the company requested 28,000 face shields and 28,000 gowns, and they got 1,000 from the city. So they're in a situation where they're having to wear the same gown, the same mask per shift. There's no way to isolate the sick patients. There's just too many, and they're going from one room to the next. And there's just no way to prevent the spread right now. I mean, these are people who are risking their lives every day, getting up. They're not quarantined at home. They're getting there on public transportation every day, going to look after my dad, going to look after the other patients there, many of whom are very frail, who have dementia, who can't follow orders like to cough into your elbow. You can't say that to a 100-year-old dementia patient, they just deserve so much better. And just to hear every day about how supply problems are exaggerated or states will have to make do or it's their own fault. I mean, if we can't protect a nursing home, I don't know what we are protecting right now. They just deserve so much better than this.
You talk about, and I think Susie Kim, your wife, in the article that, you know, that when you talked to them, you thought they would want to keep this under wraps, but instead they wanted to send they wanted to send an SOS out to the world. Like, we are desperate for this equipment because we have these staff, this committed staff who, as you said, are literally risking their lives to care for these patients who cannot get the equipment they need to do it safely.
Yeah, I mean, this is a situation where I'm not trying to use my reporter credentials to get any kind of special treatment. It's the opposite. We're trying to not spook people off. We just want information. We're sharing everyone's personal off the record. And then we were stunned when the administrator and the CEO of the company were calling back saying, hey, we know you want to talk personally, but we want to go on the record. We're terrified. We don't know what to do about this situation. It just gets worse and worse, and no one seems to be listening. And it's not just them. There's outbreaks in over 400 nursing homes around the country right now. I mean, this is very much the front lines of this fight with coronavirus. You know, we've seen the horrible situations in hospitals, but nursing homes are one step removed. They have the most vulnerable population, and stuff just travels so fast. You look at states from Connecticut to Pennsylvania to Louisiana to Tennessee to my own home state here in Maryland. They all have these terrible nursing home outbreaks, and you could just count the number of paragraphs in each story before people are complaining that they do not have protective gear. They don't have masks. They don't have gowns. They don't have face shields. This is just a nationwide problem. And, you know, assuming we're not actually near the peak of this, I just can't imagine what this is going to look like in a week, in 2 weeks, if something just does not change on a fundamental level in how we're producing and distributing supplies.
Benjy Sarlin, we're wishing your dad all the best. And thank you so much for making time tonight, sharing that story. I really, really appreciate it.
And Chris, thanks so much for having me here.